in the auspices of their current roles and with their own families and communities. But what we did at the end of all of this is they identified 4 priority areas as key areas that they wanted to focus on. And out of those 4 priority areas, they developed what a portrait of a New York State graduate should look like. And from that portrait of a graduate, we were able to come up with 12 recommendations. Understand that the work of this commission literally has the potential to change the lives of millions of students for generations to come. The regents and the department recognize that our current system has not met the needs of all students, particularly our vulnerable groups. And we understand that we have to move beyond the industrial educational model to ensure that all New York State students are provided with the opportunity to learn in environments and demonstrate their skills and knowledge in ways that best match their individual strengths and talents. So let me talk to you a little bit about our 4 priorities.
Guys, make sure we're on the right slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are we at slide 3? I get so excited about this. You have to excuse me.
Close.
All right, close. All right. Okay, back to the script now. Thank you. All right, so the commission identified 4 priorities, 4 priority areas to re-envision a system that provides an equitable opportunity for all New York State students. The consideration of multiple pathways leading to one diploma was the primary priority area identified. Due to the complex nature of our current system, the commission identified a need to simplify that system and provide many pathways leading to one diploma. The commission sought to ensure future graduation requirements were clear and simple while providing rigor, equitable pathways to meet the needs of all students, including students with disabilities, English language learners, and other underserved populations. The commission also recognized the need to ensure students, families, and schools are prepared to understand and access the multiple pathways that exist. Now, I had the pleasure of leading conversations with parents across 2 months. I think there were about 12 meetings that we did Tuesday through Thursday across a 2-month time span. And I cannot tell you how many parents said, why is it so complicated for me to understand what it takes for my child to graduate from high school? It was that simple. One of the other things that the commission prioritized was assessment flexibility. While the commission recognizes the value of Regents exams as a valid, reliable, and efficient assessment for determining student proficiency, they also sought to provide additional options for alternative assessments. Our steering committee members noted that while they still value the Regents exam, that we must build flexibility within our assessment system. The commission prioritized the understanding of meaningful life-ready credentials and desired to ensure that students who demonstrate life-ready skills obtain credentials during high school that count towards graduation. And then finally, while the commission recognized that decisions related to curriculum and instruction are locally determined by individual schools and districts in New York, they also sought to explore opportunities for more culturally responsive curriculum, instruction, and assessments that serve New York's diverse student body. The commission members emphasized their desire to further opportunities for students to showcase their knowledge in the classroom and through required assessments. Slide 4. Just to recap some of the things that came out of the Parent and Student Advisory Committee meetings. If there was one word that I had to pick that appeared in almost every conversation, was flexibility around assessments. Parents and students together talked about the anxiety that is induced by high stakes testing, the struggles of certain families whose children were struggling to exit high school because they may have arrived to this country speaking another language and were not able to graduate. And then students also shared the fact that they wanted the ability to do more with their learning. They wanted to experience learning, not just sit at a desk and learn about it. But let's talk a little bit about our portrait of a graduate. So you may be familiar with the portrait of a graduate because we have districts on Long Island that have created their own portrait of a graduate. And while currently at the New York State Education Department, we set the minimum requirements for what every school must do, what every school must provide for students to graduate from high school, districts are allowed to add additional requirements on top of that. However, we realize that in our conversations, and I have a Blue Ribbon Commission member here with me, they talked very fondly about wanting to create this universal standard for what that diploma should mean. And this is where the portrait of a graduate came into the conversation. So what is a portrait of a graduate? It is a set of high skills, knowledge areas and competencies that holistically reflect successful outcomes of P-12 education for the state, district, and the school. In recent years, an increasing number of states have created a state-level portrait of a graduate to serve as both a foundation and vision for what students should know, be able to do, and embody upon graduation to be successful in a complex and rapidly changing world. Commission members were asked to identify the academic, personal, and interpersonal attributes that all New York State graduates should possess to be successful in college, careers, citizenship, and life. Now, I want to talk a little bit about why this is so important. Upon our research, we learned that nearly 1/3 of all New York State graduates actually go directly into the workforce. And they either choose to enter college at a later point in their life, or they develop themselves a career directly into that workforce out of high school. Now, when we think about what we do in high schools today and what we're preparing children for, we really have to sit back and reflect and ask, are we truly preparing children, our students, to go into the workforce and be successful? We were fortunate to have the director, Chris White, who works for the Department of Labor, as one of our commission members. And one of the things the Department of Labor does every year is survey their businesses to understand what their needs are so they can communicate it back to the New York State Education Department. And all of the things that you will see in our portrait of the graduate are the things that they say our students are missing when they enter their places of business. They talked about the need to increase their ability to work collegially and collaborate, the ability to read and write and communicate well, very soft interpersonal skills, kind of like the things that that maybe we may have gotten away from just a bit. So our portrait of a graduate is going to hopefully be able to bring us back to that. So the Blue Ribbon Commission members' recommendations were that every New York State graduate should be a critical thinker. Our graduates must use information in novel and creative ways and reason through and weigh evidence to reach conclusions. They need to be innovative problem solvers. Our graduates must engage in problem solving with curiosity and imagination to generate innovative ideas and solutions. They need to be literate across the content area. They must be academically prepared and accomplished in the skills of reading, writing, listening, speaking, and the use of technology across all disciplines, including digital, media literacy, and financial literacy. Our students need to be culturally competent. The diversity is increasing in the state of New York. Our students need to understand that people are different, and that is a beautiful thing. That's what makes New York such a great state. They must be socially and emotionally competent. We hear more about mental health today than we've ever heard about it in previous years. I mean, I'm looking around the room, I mean, more than when we were ever in school, right? It was, listen, no one cares, you do what you need to do and just keep it going, right? Now we understand how that can impact people. And we have to make sure that our students are able to check their own social and emotional competency. Our students need to be effective communicators. And lastly, global citizens. We exist in a world today where our students are not just competing for jobs with their classmates, they're competing with people from other countries. So we need to make sure our students are prepared to do that when they need to, ultimately. Upon adoption by the Regents, the New York State Portrait of a Graduate will serve as the North Star of our state education system and will support both post-secondary and workforce transition by creating a shared understanding of the skills and knowledge that students need. Right?
Yep.
Okay, identifying our final recommendations. So to give you a very quick insight, because I'm running out of time here. Okay, so basically we met in July. They spent 3 days debating with one another, reviewing all of the information they learned about, asked questions of one another, and we as state education department figures literally sat on the outskirts of every room and allowed the commission members to work. And when they left after those 3 days, there were a total of 89 single line items of recommendations. Now, of course, a lot of that was repetitive ultimately. Our steering committee met in August to try to pull that together. And that was intentional by us because we did not want to do it at State Ed. We really were respectful of our commission members' thoughts. We wanted to maintain the authenticity and integrity of this work. So we had members come back and look at this, and we ended up with a total of 12 recommendations. So why don't we advance to our first recommendation? So recommendation number 1 has to deal with the number of diplomas and seal endorsements. Our Blue Ribbon Commission members are recommending to us that we replace the 3 diploma types with 1 diploma and with the option to add seals and endorsements. Now, currently, right now in New York State, we have 3 diplomas. We have the local, the Regents, and the Regents with advanced designation. In addition, students are allowed to endorse seals on their diploma, whether it is the seal of biliteracy, the seal of civic readiness, or mastery in mathematics. Our commission's first recommendation to replace the 3 diploma types with the option to add seals and endorsement actually received 77% consensus from our commission members. By moving to a 1 diploma system with optional seals and endorsement, a New York State high school diploma would reflect rigorous standards while allowing students to demonstrate their unique interests and accomplishments. Recommendation number 1. Number 2 has to do with credit requirements. So just to give you some insight, the next 3 recommendations all have to do with credit requirements, but the commission recommends that diploma credit requirements for graduation must include coursework in the following areas: civic responsibility or ethics, cultural competence, financial literacy education, fine and performing arts, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, writing with an emphasis on writing skills for real-world scenarios. And the commission's thought was by including this type of coursework within credit requirements, that students would be prepared to navigate the complexities facing today's society with essential knowledge and life skills necessary for success after high school. This is one you'll be excited about. Recommendation number 3, access to career and technical education. Access to career and technical ed was a topic that was often addressed by stakeholders and the commission members. Our third recommendation is looking to help provide greater access to career and technical education for all students across the state. Now, while this option already exists for some students, notice the keyword some, access to CTE does vary across the state. Commission members emphasize the need to offer and recognize relevant, rigorous, and student choice-driven opportunities to earn credit, including robust career and technical education pathways, apprenticeships, internships, and externships that will fit the individual needs of all students. Recommendation number 4. The fourth recommendation relates to the reorganization of our credit requirements. The commission recommends the department move to a model that organizes credit requirements into larger categories. For example, instead of having separate math and science credit requirements, that maybe we would consider STEM as a category for credit requirements. In addition to this reorganization, our members also recommended that we allow for a competency-based or proficiency-based model to award credit, allow local districts to offer unique options for students to earn course credit, provide student choice in the options used to satisfy the diploma credit and requirements. Our commission members placed a great deal of interest in increasing student flexibility to demonstrate knowledge and skills and opportunities that may not fit into our current model. Now, this recommendation also follows trends in other states and would provide students with more opportunities to meet graduation requirements. Recommendation 5 and 6 relate, am I going too fast? Okay, I just know I don't have a lot of time. Okay. I just want to check my speed. Okay, thank you. Recommendations 5 and 6 relate to diploma assessment requirements and future graduation measures. Currently, diploma assessment requirements include Regents exams, NICED approved Regents exam alternatives, and pathway options. At present, New York State is one of a small number of states that require an exit exam to graduate from high school. I think there's only 8 left in the country. We're one of the 8. The commission recommends that the state reduce and/or modify diploma assessment requirements to allow more assessment options. Commission members recommend the options students use to fulfill future diploma assessment requirements that they should and must align with the culturally responsive sustaining education framework, allow students the ability to demonstrate competency in multiple ways, assess the attributes included in the portrait of a graduate, that it has to be available to all students, that it needs to include writing, including writing skills for real-world scenarios. It must measure higher order thinking skills, meet the needs of all learners, and finally, provide student choice in the options used to satisfy the requirements, including performance-based assessments, capstone projects, and experiential learning. The commission was committed to ensuring that rigor is maintained and recognized that a traditional standardized test is only one way to demonstrate achievement of the learning standards. While the commission knows and we value our Regents exams, they've strongly felt that for determining student proficiency that we should allow assessment flexibilities and allow students to demonstrate everything that they've learned in the best way that suits their individual strengths and talents. Recommendation number 6, performance-based assessments. As we discussed, our commission supported the inclusion of some performance-based assessments in future diploma assessment options. They also recommend that the state develop rubrics for any performance-based assessment allowed as an option to satisfy the diploma assessment requirement. While teachers are already involved in the creation and scoring of our current state assessments, by creating state-developed rubrics for any performance-based assessments allowed as an option to satisfy our diploma assessment requirements, this recommendation would address the need to both retain rigor and high standards, as well as engage educators in the field. Now, recommendations 7, 8, and 9 are options for specific students. Our commission members indicated that the creation of more specific graduation requirements to address the unique circumstances of certain groups of students, such as non-compulsory age students, newcomer students, and refugee students, as a higher medium priority for them. Our commission also recommends that we provide exemptions from diploma assessment requirements for students with significant cognitive disabilities and major life events and extenuating circumstances, such as medical conditions, the death of a family member, or trauma prior to sitting for a required exam. Now, I will tell you that was one recommendation that was almost the closest to being unanimously recommended by all of our commission members. Because when we presented what our current requirements are and shared with them that unfortunately, our regulations do not allow for us to exempt a student for a Regents exam. So every test administration, we receive letters, my child is in chemo. My spouse has passed away, or another family member that was close has passed away. My child cannot sit for the exam. And the only thing that we can say is, well, you have the next administration. Our commission members felt very strongly that we needed to truly look at that as an option for moving forward. Recommendations 10 and 11 have to deal with teacher education. Now, some of our initial recommendations put forward by our commission members were not necessarily directly tied to graduation measures for the future. But because we stand on our word of allowing them to have their own organic and authentic conversations, we included them anyway. Because we know that this was something that was important to them as the individuals who were doing this work. Currently, our New York State teacher preparation programs include coursework on human development, which covers a variety of topics such as the impact of cultural heritage, socioeconomic level, and factors in a homeschooling community on students' readiness to learn. Our commission recommends that the Board of Regents require all New York State teacher preparation programs to provide instruction in culturally responsive, sustaining education practices and pedagogy. By requiring programs to include instruction explicitly on these practices as outlined in the recommendation, teacher candidates would gain the knowledge and skills to work with all students from diverse backgrounds in their future classrooms. Also, currently, school districts are required to submit professional development plans for teachers for the year to us at the New York State Education Department. Our commission members also recommends that the Board of Regents require that professional development plans include culturally responsive, sustaining education practices and pedagogy. And they felt that by requiring that professional development plans include culturally responsive, sustaining education practices, that this recommendation will ensure that teachers have the knowledge and skill set that they need to design and implement instruction that meets the needs of all students. Our final recommendation, recommendation number 12, has to deal with the New York State Learning Standards. The final recommendation relates to reviewing and revising the New York State Learning Standards. The commission members felt that they are looking for the Board of Regents to revise the standards to, number one, better align with college and career expectations and update it for family and consumer sciences, health, media literacy, and climate education. They would like for us to emphasize higher ordered skills and competencies, such as in health education, communication, decision-making, time management, some of those soft skills that our partners in higher ed and our labor department shared with us. And they also would like to use a culturally responsive, sustaining education and diversity, equity, and inclusivity lens in all subject areas, including history. This recommendation stresses the importance of continuously revising the standards to ensure that students have the content, knowledge, and skills to prepare them for an ever-changing world. Now, there were some additional considerations that our commission members shared with us, and they wanted us to renew our commitment to literacy in all forms, and they suggest that we consider the following. That adequate funding is provided to local school districts to help implement these shifts. Advocacy and education to all stakeholders would be imperative in supporting the recommended paradigm shifts in assessment, credit distribution, and single diploma type. Engage higher education institutions, to frame their delivery of education of our future teachers. Engage providers of professional learning to support current P-12 educators in facilitating students' attainment of the skills in the portrait of a graduate and meaningful life-ready credentials. Consider and plan now for how we at the department will evaluate the impact of these proposed changes to graduation requirements, including the impact on access, opportunities, and outcomes for historically underrepresented and underserved student groups. The commission also advised the regions to decouple the timeline to graduate from credit attainment. Now, while that is something that currently exists, we do not have a time frame around that. But again, respecting their wishes, it was important for us to include this in our final report. So to talk very quickly about what next steps are. Now, I know I kind of like sped through those recommendations very quickly, but I hope you do have the final report and you can view the slide deck and actually a recording of the presentation we did to the Board of Regents earlier this month. But I do want to say, please do not panic because none of this can happen starting tomorrow. Essentially, every single thing that has come out as a recommendation is now being looked at internally by department staff to help us understand how we can put this forward into an implementation phase. We understand that there are recommendations in this that will require us to access more funding for schools, to partner with other agencies within Albany to help provide access to certain things. And most importantly, it takes time for us to understand what else we need to do in order to ensure that schools are able to do this work. So I know that there may be a lot of questions about, well, how will this look or how will this happen? I don't have the answers at the moment. We're working on it. And just know within the coming months, as we at the department are sorting this out, identifying the different number of regulations that will be impacted by these changes, we will be re-engaging our Blue Ribbon Commission members, and we will have further conversations because we want the field to help us understand how to best make these things work within the context of your own local schools. Whatever we decide to do and how we decide to do it, please know that there will be plenty of time for us to make sure that everyone understands the transitions. And more importantly, that we build a transition time so that way no student is negatively impacted by any of the changes that we will make. And with that, I want to thank you for allowing me 40 minutes of time to kind of rush you through our recommendations. And please know that race through it is in no way indicative of its importance. Quite honestly, I feel that the work of this commission will change the lives of students in ways that I could have never imagined possible. And I am so proud of the work that they have done on this topic. They worked for hours. And please know they always got homework before every single meeting because it was important for them to come to these meetings prepared to have rich conversations with their colleagues about the different themes that we were thinking. So before I turn it over to questions, Sue, I don't know if there's anything you want to share.
I think you did a phenomenal job, but in addition to everything you said, I have to say that being part of this experience was extraordinary. I know that when we got started with it, there were a lot of people that probably thought, and the word was out there, that the State Education Department and the Board of Regents already knew what they wanted. That is not the case. They did not direct our conversations. They were simply there to facilitate the fact that we had conversations. Any information we requested, they got for us. We were able to share with each other if somebody had a resource that we had not asked for, or they hadn't given to us as homework before a meeting, was shared with us. It was an extraordinary opportunity to be part of this. And as you said, it will change. I hope so. It will change the lives of every student in this state. I hope that certainly is our goal, right?
Absolutely.
So we'll go into questions. I think what we'll do is we'll take two from the rooms, and then I'll ask Paul to let me know if there's anybody in the chat. So anybody in the room have a question for Angelique? Catherine?
So I don't have a question. I have a comment for everyone here. I was lucky enough to be in the building the last day and a half or 2 days that the commission was meeting. And in the hallway met Samantha Bruno, who is.
Oh, my gosh.
And he's in Suffolk BOCES
Graduate.
alum, who I cannot tell you how many adults came up and said, this young lady is incredible. And you're from BOCES, and that's where she went to, that she's incredible. And she was one of the students, so that you know, who actually led the subset conversations in the rooms with the adults. So she was facilitating conversations with education professionals. And that says something about what this BOCES does and what, was it Eastport South Manor? And what Eastport South Manor does. So for those of you who are online who are students, understand that people in the state think this is a great place.
And before we take the next question, I will point out on that note that aside from New York City DOE, I have to say, Eastern Suffolk BOCES had the best representation. Bruno, Ms. Littman, and we had Dr. Jordan Gonzalez, who works for our Long Island Arbor. Just saying.
You had to stick that in there,
I'd
right?
also like to add that Samantha Bruno found her way to the Blue Ribbon Commission through our Community Legislative Committee and her work at advocacy.
I cannot tell you how impressed we were with Samantha. She was actually on our steering committee.
Yeah.
So while we had commission members sitting on two separate assessment and program committees, there was a separate steering committee that worked closer with us. Samantha was that student for us. She did interviews with the press like flawlessly. Like I was like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? And just a phenomenal student. Samantha is off in college, and if she's watching out there, Samantha, we miss you. We're so proud of you, but we wish you the best with what you're doing at the time.
Paul, anything in Zoom?
No.
Not yet. Okay. Any questions?
So I'll do a question.
Okay.
The commission is talking about a comprehensive restructuring of K-12 education, basically. And our teacher preparation programs are handled by SUNY, which is not necessarily under the auspices of the State Education Department in this area in which this work is being done. So how is the conversation between state ed, P12, K-12 side, and SUNY, who really controls and owns teacher prep?
Excellent question, and thank you for this. So one of the things that I adore most about our commissioner is she truly is a great connector, right? So she has forged partnerships between the state education department and the other executive agencies in a way that we have not had in decades at this point in time. I mean, Governor Hochul announced the RECOVES grant from within the state education department building. It had been, I think, 5 decades since the governor had actually been in the New York State Education Department. Tom DiNapoli reached out to her about his excitement and our push for financial literacy, and they're going to step in to help and assist us with this. And she does meet very regularly with John King, who is our SUNY chancellor. So with all of that said, I'm pretty confident that our institutions of higher education, I mean, there were representatives on our committee. We met with them to hear what they wanted to tell us about our students once they leave our high schools. And they shared very candid responses with us on some of the things that we need to consider in integrating into that high school experience so students are prepared. And sometimes you wonder, well, is that really true? But yes, because there were students that came right behind them and said exactly the same thing, that I wish I had the chance to experience this because I struggled with this when I went to college. Or if I had had the chance to take this, then this would have been easier for me when I finally got to college. And it's those types it's that type of feedback that we need to hear for us to understand what we have to do moving forward. So we're looking to partner with our institutions of higher ed, and we do approve our institution of higher education programs. We have a deputy commissioner for higher education, Bill Murphy, and they have this report, and they're, I would imagine, just as excited. Thank you.
Angelique, some of the initial reaction, most of the initial reaction that I've been exposed to has been extremely positive and excited. But if you read any of the papers the next day, there were some reactions that had two kind of main criticisms. One was they're getting rid of the Regents exams. And the second was we're watering things down and making it easier for students to graduate. What is the department's response to those?
Excellent questions, and thank you for giving me this platform. Let me pull my chair up a little bit. This one. Okay, so it's interesting that anytime you look to change or do something different, you always receive that type of feedback, right? We are not getting rid of the Regents exam. That's not what the recommendations say. They actually say to reduce and or modify. So because that's the what the commission members suggested that we do, that's what we're going to figure out how to do. It has never been about getting rid of the Regents exams. And I know that narrative existed throughout the entire process, essentially. As far as watering down or reducing the rigor, I will share this with you. So I've had a family member who was recently in the hospital, someone very close to me, someone I love dearly. And all I could think to myself was, thank goodness the doctors that are working on this family member had the opportunity to do a residency where they had the opportunity to practice and apply the things that they've learned in their classrooms through medical school. As I was driving up the Southern State Parkway here, I said, I'm so happy that in order to get a driver's license in the state of New York, you don't just have to simply pass a test on paper. You actually have to get in a car and demonstrate that you can drive in order to be issued your license. It is the same exact thing. All we are looking for is to give students the ability to apply the learning that they're doing in their classrooms. Think about our ESBOCES CTE programs and the way that they are designed. Part of their day is spent in a classroom learning knowledge, and then the other part of their day is spent applying everything that they've learned. And I would say that it's actually more rigorous to apply what you've learned and demonstrate that you know it than to just be able to recant it from memorization. And interestingly enough, when I look at, as a mother of three, I have children that have attended public schools, and then I have a child that went to an extremely expensive private school. And when I look at the things that my son had the opportunity to do, the experiences he had as internships on Wall Street. I mean, being able to learn about commodities, trading and oils and all the stuff I don't ever understand with the stock market, right? The trips that he was able to take, the community service projects that were done in the area of his school, he walked away with not just knowing something, but also knowing how to do those things. And all the commission wants are for students, if they should choose, they should be able to have that experience.
Dave,
Yeah.
can I just add something to what Angelique said? I think that something, and we're really probably preaching to the choir here, but we know that all students learn differently, right? And yet we've chosen to assess them all in the same way.
Mhm.
That doesn't make any sense even just from a logic standpoint. So we're not looking, and the commission members every single member was crystal clear about the fact that we don't have an expectation that rigor should be diminished
Nope.
at the very least.
Mhm.
And that's why, in terms of the performance-based assessment recommendation, that we wanted it to be a state-developed rubric. This way, one district can't assess students one way and another district assess students another way, and that it not be equal or equitable. So I can only support what Angelique just told everyone. It isn't about reducing rigor at all. And for the people that want to put that as the headline for to catch everybody's attention and get everybody crazy, I just say, read the report. If you read the report, you will not find that in the report.
Mhm.
And I just say, go talk to Susan Littman. Joe?
Yeah, so first I love it. It's great.
Thank you.
When I read the report, I read it through the lens of being a former employer, mostly of blue collar workers, and what I looked at when I was trying to hire people.
Mhm.
And it's a similar lens here at BOCES for a CTE program, preparing people very often to go directly into the workforce.
Mhm.
And then I read page 17 of the report, and it talks about where graduates discuss their coursework, but also their experiences.
Mhm.
And it all seemed to resonate, like it all seemed to marry. But then when I looked at page 11,
Mhm.
I see the indicators and success measures where you're coupling the positive association
Mhm.
between employment and these criteria.
Mhm.
I see that the only one that's indicated is the optional coursework,
Mhm.
but the additional experiences is not indicated as something that has a positive association. And as an
Mhm.
employer, I felt that was a very important aspect. I wanted to see that the student who was taking coursework had hobbies that indicated interest beyond the classroom.
Mhm.
And that often was the make or break it for choosing who I would hire.
Oh, interesting.
So, it seemed to indicate in the written section
Mhm.
that experiences were important,
They were.
but then in the chart, it doesn't show that that's a positive association. I'm wondering what your thought is on that.
Yeah, so that came from the research that was done by WestEd for us. So if you can think back and just take a step back in time for a moment, before the pandemic, we were holding regional stakeholder meetings to talk about this very exact topic. And then COVID happened. Actually, one session happened.
Yeah.
Was it at this building? I wonder, there's the other building. Okay. And then COVID happened and then everything came to a stop. And from those initial meetings, there was a strong indication that we should look at performance-based assessments and experiences of such of that we're talking about. So we asked our friends at West Ed, thank goodness for them. They did an amazing job actually researching not just what other states are doing, but also what other countries are doing and how they manage project-based assessments and internships and apprenticeships. And what you're seeing in that actual document is a part of their readiness indicators that they found as part of their research. That's not New York State Education Department work, and that's not something we're looking to measure. I actually agree with you. Actually, one of the students that we had present at one of our commission meetings, it was a young gentleman way upstate. I want to say maybe from Lafayette district, I believe. And he spoke to us so eloquently about the model that his school has in place, where he was able to fulfill all of his requirements for graduation in grades 8, 9, and 10. And then he spent his 11th and 12th grade year in an internship with a local company that had a relationship with the school. When he graduated from high school, they offered him a job right away. And then he ended up becoming a co-owner of the company. And when you hear something like that, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, why can't we make this available for every student who would want to do that? And some of the barriers that prevent us from doing that at Mass are because of the way that we have our days scheduled, the way that courses are designed, the seat time, our Carnegie units, all of those things play into this. And that student was actually the inspiration that made people say, wait a second, we need to figure out how to get more internship program, registered apprenticeship programs into schools. And I know there were a number of folks on the commission that reached out to our Department of Labor, who actually who manages registered apprenticeships, to say, how can I get my district involved? So I agree with you, sir.
Well, thank you for that answer.
You're welcome.
Paul, anything in the chat?
Nope. People are free to unmute themselves also, so.
Oh, did I put everyone asleep? I'm sorry if I did.
Not too much, I hope.
Catherine?
So can I ask a second question?
Yes.
And this question is really for the team at the table. Because as I look at this work and I look at the shift in emphasis on student practical skills and workforce and whether it's special education students who are in workforce or the kids who are, graduating in the top 10 but want to choose BOCES to do some practical experiences. As I look at this, I wonder as a BOCES that when districts start developing their own career pathways and CTE programs locally in their buildings, how will that impact what we do or what we have done and what we offer? Because if a BOCES is the consortium space and everybody decides, well, I think I should have cosmetology because that's easy, I can put it in a classroom, right? We already have some districts that are doing automotive because they can find the space. We have limited carpentry, not as big as our carpentry. How, and a district says, well, I have my life skills class, so let me teach my life skills courses, an experience in food service and hotel management and stuff. I can do that in a classroom, right? I can do that in a space in my local building. What does that mean for us? And how do we think forward? Are we the supporter and builder for the districts? Or do we have to be something different? And that's a question for SED. as well. Yeah, I mean, really, because embedded in this, if school districts themselves have to take responsibility for career planning and for career options and for internships and externships, right? I have 2 hospitals by me. So internships and externships could be in nursing, they could be in radiology, they could be in physical therapy, they could be in any number of things, right? So I got 5 districts competing because they're all contiguous to that space. For those kinds of classroom-based, I can get my kids here, I don't have to put them on the bus to BOCES, I don't have to lose them in my count, so. How do we all start to think about that? And how does state ed not cause a backlash because a fundamental instruction structure has to completely realign?
So can I take a stab at that? So just from a BOCES perspective, the answer is yes, we need to change the way we think of it because, some of us are with our current CTE program are limited by space. Others are limited by geography.
That's right.
And so, when you look at that recommendation or 4, I think that's, essentially says increase access to CTE. And you look at some of the legislation that had been rolling around for the past couple of years, if that were to come to be, if tomorrow there was this unlimited funding stream that allowed every student to come to a BOCES CTE program, we wouldn't be able to meet that across the state, right? For different reasons. So we do need to think differently because we as a BOCES would need help to figure out how to fund it to build additional space, but we also need to be creative because those internships are going to start to become limited, even in an area like Long Island. And think about my colleagues in the North Country where manufacturers and internship opportunities are few and far between. So we don't have an answer to that yet, but just a realization that we do need to think about how we do those things differently for all of our students.
Yeah. And if I can just add in, what Dave said is pretty much it, right? I think essentially, we are very densely populated here, right? So it's easy for us to have access to places and buildings. We may be stuck in traffic for a little bit, and listen, don't get me wrong, but it's easy for us to do that. In other parts of the state, that is not the case. There are students who are not able to participate in their own BOCES programs because they would spend too much time on an actual school bus, because that's how great the distance is. Sometimes they're separated by 50 to 80 miles. And for situations like that, those students should have that opportunity to engage in CTE, but they just cannot because of the geography. So I agree with everything that Dave said. I don't think it will be up to us at State Ed to figure out how BOCES need to rethink, but what it will be for us is to convene our BOCES friends and tell them, please help us understand how we can best support you, because BOCES have phenomenal programs. And if it serves the students well and you can provide it for every student that wants it, then they should continue to do so.
Kathy, the State Ed's credit, in addition to the monthly meetings that we as district superintendents have, there's also a statewide network of CTE leadership that meets with, SED CTE leadership and standards and instruction leadership, and they had that audience. So as this continues to grow, we will have an audience to be able to provide that feedback. I'll think the last question from Bill.
Yeah, so it's a comment. I think that the question that I had asked earlier ties into this idea that what our CTE program is doing is different than what a district is doing. It's not a classroom. It's a combination of a classroom and an experience. What the students get when they show up at these programs here feels more like coupled with the classroom. And I think that that's a message that needs to be loud and clear statewide, and people need to know that the BOCES is doing something different than they did. Just this.
Okay.
All right. And close us out.
Okay. You can do the close.
Sure. So, first of all, I'm glad you were only kidding that you forgot about tonight, because while I probably could have walked us through that slide deck with some sort of understanding, I certainly would not have done as well as you did. I need you all to know that, so, Angela's kind of mentioned it, but the last thing that really happened, the last large group meeting we had here at Eastern Suffolk BOCES in March 2020 was the graduation measure stakeholder meeting in Sequoia.
Yeah.
In room one, actually all of Sequoia Instructional Center, and Angelique and I, as both Eastern Suffolk DSs, hosted that on behalf of the commissioner. Commissioner at the time was here. I think Roger Tillis was here, and then we broke out and then the world stopped. And so did that work. And what Angelique is kind of glossing over is, her predecessor was charged, I think, with kind of restarting that engine, but that person rightfully and understandably retired. Shortly thereafter, Angelique got the job and was very quickly handed those reins. And
Yeah.
I just,
First day.
know several members of the commission very well. And the genuine reaction they have is just, it was amazing. And they all credit Angelique for it. Everybody did a lot of work, but the facilitation on it was incredible. This really is monumental. If regardless of how long you've been in education, you've never seen a change as potentially monumental as this will be. So it's really exciting to be part of it. It's exciting to have, the person that really facilitated the tail end of that work, or tail end of the commission's work. Although I understand they're not really done with the commission just yet.
Not
We
finished.
found that out at
Yeah.
the presentation to the regents.
Sure did.
But I can also,
Surprise. You're not finished.
I can also tell you that outside of this work, SED has established an incredible team that Angelique is part of. And it has been a pleasure to work with them on this and so many other things. So Angelique, we have something to present to you. So on behalf of Eastern Suffolk BOCES Community Legislative Committee, this certificate is presented to Angelique Johnson-Mingle for sharing important new NYSED updates and initiatives, November 30th, 2023, signed by me and Mr. Miller, Board Vice President and Chair of this committee. So we really appreciate you being here. And that's very nice.
Every time I hear it.
Thank you.
Thank you.